Hello. Wanted to give you a briefing on the historical demonstration. Um, I try to, conversate a little bit with people on the server, the Discord server. This is who this is primarily targeted to. But if you're anybody else watching that want to get involved, there is a Discord server that I've created called Playing War Games, and it was intended to be used as a way to show people just that, me playing war games or me playing war games with other people. I haven't gotten a lot of use out of it because I haven't been able to get a lot of people to see that I've created it. Promoting stuff on Twitter seems to be difficult. Maybe there's just too much stuff scrolling past everybody's screen. Anyway, the uh, Jeffro Brosar uh, stream that came out a few nights ago seems to have opened a lot of people's eyes as to that form of play. It's piqued a little bit of curiosity. Unfortunately, it's also generated, oddly, quite a bit of hostility. I don't want to play into that. I don't want to discuss it or burden you with that. Just familiarize yourself with what I'm talking about. I'd love to call it something else besides Brosar. I usually call it kriegspiel, which is a German word for war game. And in the wargaming world, that tends to be the descriptor used for this kind of play, kriegspiel, or sandbox game if you prefer. Anyway, just to avoid any unpleasantries, I decided to keep the server called Playing War Games as opposed to putting in any BROSR hashtag or anything like that. So I asked folks, I don't know, it might be hard to see with the way Discord threads through things, but I asked if you'd rather have sci-fi, fantasy, or historical. And nobody replied, which is fine. I understand not everybody's eyes are glued to my server screen every minute of the day. But I got thinking, maybe it would be beneficial to start with historical, just to see how the roots of this thing, you know, or see the roots of this thing more appropriately, because it all started with wargaming. It all being these original campaigns run by Arneson and Gygax and stuff like that. So I don't know, out of the 7 or 8 folks that are here, how many of you have any wargame experience at all. So I figured I'd start with Normandy, World War II, because most people tend to at least have some tertiary knowledge of what that was about. You know, it's fairly famous for obvious reasons, the start of the Great Crusade and all that. So I thought it would have at least some familiarity with people, even if you're not a big war gamer. So that's why I chose that battle or campaign. I also chose a war game that I thought was capable of showing multiple moving parts without being uh, too detailed or complex for folks who are casual or not familiar with wargaming. I didn't want to bog you down with too much. So this is kind of a light fare. If you've never seen wargaming before, you probably should give you a little bit of a primer on some basics without inundating you with information that you really don't need. But I will give you just this quick, just so you know what you're looking at. First, I'll get the right. That's the wrong book, dummy. That's my fault. I'm sorry. Just please bear with me while I get you to the right. 3rd edition rules. And my Yugo of a computer crunches through a PDF instead of instantly loading it like it should. Okay. So what is all this, information you're going to see on this graphic displayed for you? Just for the purposes of a demonstration, you won't really need to memorize this. I'm not really asking you to participate or learn how to play war games per se. Unless you're interested in that, I'll be happy to go through it with you. I'd love to have participants instead of having it some sort of solo demonstration. But just so you look at a bunch of stuff and you at least have some familiarity or understanding of what you're looking at visually, I'll just quickly go through all this stuff. These little counters have some graphics and kind of like a key here that you can see. Most war games have what they call a NATO symbolism. And learning NATO symbols, we'll get down there and look at them real quick. They're pretty easy once you memorize them like anything else. And they have two parts. They have the box that has some graphic to indicate the general type of unit, and then above it they have hash marks, dots, or X's that all have a descriptor of the size of the unit. Lots of war games have unit IDs. Depending on, this is one part that might be a little bit confusing, because sometimes they use the historical unit numbers. Other times they use an ID that is fictitious or randomly generated for each hex. Usually depends on the age of the game. The randomly generated tend to be in the elderly games. This game is, if I recall correctly, is something like 2012. I could be wrong, but it's 15 to 20 years old max, if I remember correctly. And they always have, well, I shouldn't say always, depending on the type of game, but a fairly common convention is to have combat strength and movement allowance displayed in between a dash such as this. In this game, not all games have this, but there's a key for the quality of unit, and quality just means, you know, how tough, how well trained, you know, real go-getters, you know. No offense to anybody, but, you know, the difference between Johnny Straight Leg Infantry and, you know, Rambo, the Special Forces guy, you know, that's kind of a Hollywood version of describing the different quality of troops and stuff like that. So, but gives you some idea. And there's different types here. So when you see the silhouettes, that tends to be a unit that is focused around a kind of vehicle, and the vehicle is displayed in a silhouette form here, like these Sherman tanks, and they have a little bit of a different setup. They have instead of a dash, they have this armor rating. These are details that we really won't need to get into. I'm using this as a vehicle to demonstrate OSR, but I didn't want people just to be staring at these things thinking, how the hell do I, you know, I don't know, this is all Greek to me. So I just thought I'd go through it a little bit quick. Some of these details aren't necessary. If they become contextually relevant to the narrative being described, then we'll kind of go back and review and show them to you. I did want to just give you a quick look at the NATO symbols shown before that I talked about before. These are some of the basics. Again, you know, they seem, you know, odd and all that, but after you've played a couple of turns or played a couple of games or something, you tend to catch on to these symbols, as they are standard across wargame products. So, and these, I'm sorry to flip on you so much, but these are the types. The boxes with the symbols as described are the types. And then down here, where I made you dizzy, my apologies, that's the stripes and hexes and so forth, or X's, I should say. They show you the different sizes. If you're not familiar with battalion, regiment, brigade, division, as far as what that translates to in men, it's somewhat varied between militaries and how they organize themselves. But in general, a battalion it really can be quite varied, but let's just shoot at Americans. You got about 300 to 800 men. Let's put it that way. The regiment can be sometimes about the same. The British, well, again, that might be too. I don't want to confuse you. I'm sorry. But anyway, the brigades and the divisions become even bigger. Divisions tend to be 25 to 30,000 people. Brigades tend to be 15 to 2,000 ish. Again, dependent. They can vary quite a bit. Another size that can be quite varied is corps. That can go anywhere from 50 to even 200,000 sometimes, in rare instances. An army is, again, that's very national dependent on what an army can be, and there's no real average. It all just depends on what's packed into it. So, but generally, the more symbols, the larger it is. 2 I's versus 3. 4 hexes versus, or X's versus 2. I keep wanting to say hexes. Got hexes on my mind. Anyway, so it just give you some idea, and I'll help you through the rest as we go. I hope it's not overwhelming, but I just thought let's show you how that works while you look at the stuff. So what I thought I would do is give everybody an assignment. Now, if you don't feel comfortable or don't feel like you've learned enough to actually participate, that's fine. At least maybe at first. Maybe after you watch it a little bit, you might want to jump in. But I'm just going to give people an assignment. People here, your screen name assigned to something, just to show how it would work between you and other players on 2 different sides in a BROSR type environment. So that's why you'll be assigned a section or group of forces, even though it may not have a lot of meaning to you at first. So, and we'll just play a couple of days worth or a couple of turns worth, and we'll show you how it all works. And that'll be about the demonstration. And we'll get into, I won't teach you everything about wargaming as far as rules and dice throwing and all that, again, unless you're interested in it. It'll just be kind of a narrative. So that's the basics of my demo, or at least the crux of what I plan to do. If it's not clear, because I'm still learning how to articulate properly across the internet. I'm a new vlogger. Please speak up, ask some questions, comments, corrections, constructive criticism is greatly appreciated. So let's have a little convo about it and see where to go from there. And if enough people go, hey man, I want to see some dragons and orcs, then we can flip the channel from historical. I do think there's some utility in learning historical, just from the basis of understanding the whole BORSR thing. But I don't want to bore people either. So go ahead and speak up. Let me know. We'll see you.